So the home that I grew up in is in Eichler. It was my grandparents' home, and then we moved there. From the time I was around 12 and on, that's the home that was home to me. And in the kitchen, there is this beautiful, big bay window, which if you know Eichlers, you know that these are features of some of those models. This is a beautiful piece in the kitchen, but it had one time every week where I wanted it gone forever. Every Saturday morning, almost, growing up, we would have like waffles, do a slow morning, do like the typical family Saturday morning breakfast, which was great. Love waffles, definitely team waffle over team pancake if you are curious about where I stand on controversial issues. Clearly it's way more controversial than I anticipated. We'd make our waffles, we'd have our breakfast, have our bacon, and then you have that like post-breakfast, like I should go take a nap, but you can't because there's dishes to do. So we would dutifully get up and do the dishes. Now at this point, it's like 10 o'clock in the morning or so, right? And the light through this bay window is like pouring into our eyes. It is so bright. I'm not kidding you, and I'm not being melodramatic here. Like I would have to squint and like almost wear sunglasses just to do the dishes in my home. This light was abrasive and bright and brilliant, and I was like, I don't mind doing dishes, just not. Can we wait like a half hour for the light to shift because this is too much for me? This very same light, though, would do something incredibly beautiful at this same time of day, and best at this time of day. My grandmother and my mother would hang these prisms in the bay window. And so while I'm there squinting and cursing and wishing I was doing something else, behind me, decorating the back wall, would be these beautiful flickers of colorful light. They had a number of them, 3 or 4, and it would be this beautiful array of light of all different colors displayed across the wall. Light can be a harmful and abrasive thing, or it can be a beautiful thing. Indeed, light is kind of a mystery even to those who know the most about it. For a long time, there was the debate that raged on, is light a wave? Is it a particle? Roger's not here, so I can't nerd out about it with him. He's our resident physicist. But light is varied in its way it's perceived. When the Bible talks about light, I was just talking to Joel about this because it's kind of funny. As I was studying, I thought I knew a lot about how the Bible uses the metaphor of light, and it turns out I'm not as smart as I thought I was. Because the Bible will take this metaphor, and depending on the book, depending on the context, kind of what it means and doesn't mean can kind of get mixed. Now, that doesn't mean the Bible's not clear about what it's saying. In fact, on the contrary, it's abundantly clear. But it's important when we're talking about light that we know what light we're talking about. And if we are called light, like this verse that Joel just read says that we are, it behooves us, it is important for you and I to embrace and understand what that means. What does it mean to be light as a follower of Jesus? So let's just dive right in. What does it mean to be a light? Verse 14, the beginning of it, Jesus is saying this. Now this is in the introductory moments of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, one of his most famous, probably his most famous sermon of all time. And he says this, you are, to his followers, the light of the world. What a proclamation. What a job description. What a title. But we can lift this from its context and what Jesus is talking about, and we can take it and, slap some Americana on it, and it becomes something that it was never intended to be in the original language. We have great songs that we learned as children. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Let your light shine forth is something we often pass around in church context, but it's important that you and I understand what Jesus is talking about here. He is saying, for those who are following Jesus, and that's what this series through the summer has been about, what it means to follow Jesus. If your faith is in him, he is categorically giving you a title. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. It doesn't matter what you think about yourself. If you are in Christ, if you are redeemed and forgiven of your sin through your faith in Christ, he has put you in a category which is, you are light. It's true. It is categorically true about you as a follower of Jesus, that you are the light of the world, whether you feel like it when you woke up this morning or you felt like the opposite of light. Kind of like after you eat pancakes or waffles. If you felt like that, you are still the light of the world. But here's what's important to grasp, is that we are this light as followers. It is categorically true, whether you like it or not. But you are not self-qualified as this light. Put another way, this light does not emanate from your radiance and your goodness as a person. Now let me be clear. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You, if you have air in your lungs, are an image bearer of God, whether you follow Jesus or not. You are endowed by your Creator with inherent dignity, worth, and value. This is true of you no matter what you do with Jesus Christ. But this light that is being described here is not yours, and that it does not emanate from yourself. It doesn't matter how kind you are. It doesn't matter how hard you work. It doesn't matter how much you've done for other people. This light that you are defined with is not inherent to you. So what's going on here? Well, to bring in some more light metaphors here and just further clear things up, John chapter 1, verses 4 through 5 talks about the true light and the true light. It's Jesus. This is what he says. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light, as Jesus, shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So here we have another light being described, which does not describe my experience as being light. I don't know about you. Here is a dark that is eternal, that is powerful, that has overcome any darkness that it has touched. This is the source of the light that you and I possess. The life and the light that you possess is not yours. It does not radiate from yourself, from your goodness, from who you are as a person. It is from the light of men, that is Jesus Christ. If you have put your faith in Jesus, if you are following Jesus, then the goodness that is Jesus, the righteousness that is Jesus, is substituted for your shame, your guilt, your sin, your identity. And you are given a new identity as a son or a daughter in God. This is what it means to follow Jesus, that you are categorically different than you were before. In both cases, you have value. In both cases, you are lovable and worthy of honor and respect as a person. We're not saying anything to the contrary. But what we are saying is those that follow Jesus have been, through no effort or merit of their own, been declared and set aside as those who are the light of the world. I stumbled across this verse in Job this week. I'm a pastor, so I do things like read Job in a week. I was really just catching up on my Bible plan, actually, is what I was doing. And this verse that I'd never really examined before really struck me. This is at the end of the narrative of Job, all right? He has everything taken from him. He has the unhelpful back and forth between him and his friends. Then everyone gets rebuked by a guy who's way younger. Then God comes in and says, dress like a man, I'm going to tell you what's really going on. And after all of this, Job is humbled. After all of this, Job's plans for speaking back to God have been silenced. And he has his famous speech where he says, I'm nothing, I'm humble. But he says this in verse 5 of chapter 42. He says, I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Brothers and sisters, as categorically different as those who have been set apart as light, you and I need to remember that what is the reason you are that way is at one point you had seen and beheld the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And you, like Job, had been humbled in your sin and your inability to make your life right, or the inability to shed the guilt from your heart. No, you had seen with eyes clear and with heart full Jesus Christ for all that he is, and all of his goodness and beauty and joy. What he holds forth to you, the forgiveness, the newness of life in the gospel. We had heard about him before, but if you follow Jesus, you know what it means to see him for who he is, the light of the world and the life of men. Growing up, we never had fires in our home. There are a number of reasons for that. We had beautiful candelabras with candles on them set in the fireplace. But for a number of reasons, both in my home and my grandparents' home, we had never had a fire in our home. And then I got married. And my wife's family has a beautiful, beautiful fireplace in their living room, old stone. And it was recently replaced with a fancier, more efficient model. But we had to have this last fire, as the family wanted this last fire before the fireplace of their childhood was taken away. And the problem was, when we wanted this last fire, it was like August or September. So all the kids, and Sharon, Juliana's mom, was like, "We need to have a fire, our last fire." And Bob is like, who's the dad, is like, "Guys, the air conditioning is on in our home. We do not need a fire." Here's what I was struck by actually having a fire in your home, which is commonplace for many of you, but this was a new experience for me, okay? Actually having a fire in your home is an incredible source of light and warmth. I thought I'd become a child again and sit next to it and have that experience, and it took me 30 seconds, and I'm like, I'm dripping in sweat. This is such a hot thing. So my family's found the happy medium, which is turning on the Netflix fire on the screen, which still has the crackles and pops, but no warmth. Here's the big idea. Something happens when you catch the flame, feel the warmth of the light of the world. Those who have seen and beheld, not just heard about him, not just heard people talk about him, but have seen and beheld the light of the world, it changes you. It changes you. It's not just people talking about Jesus, saying it would be a good idea to follow Jesus. When you encounter him and see him for who he is and what he has done for you, that experience changes you and you are changed forever. That's what Job's referring to here, and that's what it means to be lights of the world. We're not just people who peddle facts about Jesus that are historical in nature. We're not just people who share good teachings that he had. We, as the light of the world, are those who have been marked by the warmth and the heat of the Son of God himself. That's what it means. So as you and I embrace and experience the real Jesus, you are endowed with this light from the light of the world. We talked about this a lot in Genesis, but we are image bearers of God, which means we do not emanate glory, we do not emanate God's nature from ourselves, but our job is to, as his image bearers, reflect the goodness of God. That is what we were created for. And sin, our sin nature, gets in the way of us doing that. And part of following Jesus means that lens gets cleared, we are washed clean, we are forgiven, and given a new identity, and we reflect the glory of God everywhere we go. You are given this light. It is not yours that you generated. And it's an identifying language. It becomes who you are, whether you feel like it or not. You, as a follower of Jesus, are the light of the world. Now, does that describe your experience all the time? No. It describes mine. I don't know about you guys. Did you read Job this week? I'm just kidding. Of course, this does not describe our experience all the time. Doesn't make it untrue. But let's all be a witness together to the fact that sometimes I don't feel that shiny. Sometimes I'm a bit discouraged by the life that I'm leading. Well, Jesus accounts for this because he knows that. And he explains the nature of this in the verses that follow. He says, "A city that's set on a hill cannot be hidden." Imagine this glorious, magnificent city, well lit, on a hill. You're going to see that light. Verse 15, "Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house." In other words, he's saying this, that light, once lit, its purpose is to be a source of light for others. It's not meant to be hidden. It's not meant to be covered up. It's not meant to be doused in any way. Once it is lit, once it is there, its purpose, its design, its intent is to be light for those around it. Whether it's a city on a hill or a lamp in a home, its purpose is to emanate light, heat, warmth. Jesus says this in John chapter 8. He says, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." He says earlier in John 3, verses 19 through 20, "And this is the judgment," meaning this is the situation into which I am coming. "The light has come into the world, and people love the darkness rather than the light, because their works were evil. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his works should be exposed." So we are categorically light, and to follow Jesus means light and life. But conversely, to kind of use the metaphor in a different way, Jesus is saying that to turn from Jesus means darkness. Because here's the thing about the light that he gives you. It's not just a token that you hold in your heart or that you hold in your wallet. The light that you've been given, the light that you inherit as a follower of Jesus, is active and working in your life as well. And light does a number of things, but I thought of three. Number one is that light exposes things that are in darkness. You and I are not able to be in any way, shape, or form the light of the world. We are categorically that. But what light does as it works within us as followers of Jesus is it exposes the corners of our heart that are dark. Exposes the things within us that we hide from others. Exposes the things within you and me that we'd rather keep in the dark, as Jesus alludes to. Perhaps a very integrous group or organization, exceptionally integrous, could conduct an in-house audit for the way that they operate, spend their money, do things. But we all know that an outside audit, if people welcome an outside audit to a company or a business or an organization, there's some credibility there because it is someone from the outside who is hopefully objective, comes in, examines what's there, says this is going great, this is going so-so, this really needs to change. And brothers and sisters, you and I cannot do a very good job of internally auditing the state of our hearts in sin. You and I need an outside audit, and that's what the light of the world does for you and me. You and I need objective truth to line our life up against. You and I need someone outside of yourself saying this is good or this is harmful. You and I need someone or something outside of yourself proclaiming forgiveness over your life. You and I need an outside audit. That's what light does. It exposes. And then in turn what happens is as that is worked out in your life, as more light is in you, exposing, working, burning, purifying, then your presence and words do that for other people. And you can tell the difference between someone who is experiencing that and someone who is just faking it or using words in a harmful way to judge other people. Being a light does not mean picking out all of the sin in some random person on the street of their life. We as the church do that to one another. That's what the word says. We're to build one another up in love as we speak the truth. And that way the church becomes even more so a city on a hill. Light exposes. Our presence and our words should be seasoned with the grace of God, but also speaking truth into one another's lives that we may expose light in ourselves and in those around us. Light exposes. Light also illuminates. What is it that's the Wizard of Oz, I believe, that begins in black and white, and there's this sort of monotonous life, story of Hayden's childhood that's displayed, and I love you. Hayden's from Kansas, and he's not in Kansas anymore. Is this Oz? I don't know where I'm going with this metaphor. I'm just having fun right now. I love you, man. Christ provides color. This is not a good analogy. It's okay. It's okay. Christ provides color, context. It fills out life. I've heard it in the reverse. Pastor Allen used to say this in his calling to ministry, where he was very successful in business, and he loved that season of life, but once he came to Christ, all the things that used to taste just didn't taste the same anymore. And he knew what he needed to do. He needed to follow Jesus and particularly pour out in the realm of ministry. Light illuminates even the dreariest and darkest of lives. That's what the light of the world does. He exposes, but he also illuminates. He also brings joy into the mundane. He also breathes purpose into what you thought meant nothing. And our presence should in turn reflect that light. As you are around people who are caught in the monotony of life and are discouraged by that, you're able to say to them not in a manipulative way, but in a way that shares and puts forth the truth. No, it matters how you live your life. Not to hold that as guilt over you, but to give them a vision for a life well lived. It matters how you treat your spouse. It matters how you raise your children. It matters that you do the right things at work and serve others. Light doesn't just expose, it illuminates and fills the life that we've been given. When Jesus said, I've come to give life and life to the full, it doesn't mean that every day of your life is going to be an overseas adventure. It means that he's going to breathe unbelievable purpose and intention to what you've been called to here. Light also offers hope. The light of Jesus reminds you and me, as the light works within us, that the darkness around you is not all there is. This isn't the end of the story. This isn't the end of humanity. This isn't the end of our hope. But our hope comes from outside of us. Our hope is tied in things that are eternal and true, and that is the gospel. And likewise, as light works within us, our presence then is to be one where this hope is radiating from us, where we hold so tightly to the hope we have in Jesus that that's the hope that we can offer other people, in the church first and then beyond these walls. So this light that you and I have been given as those who are light of the world is not something that we just say thanks and tuck away in our back pocket. No, it works within us, and as that work happens, then the fruit of the Spirit is born in our life. In our life. To hide, we all do this, let's just be honest, okay? It's church. To hide in darkness and sin is not only to hide from the light you need, it is to hide from our calling as followers of Jesus. Because let's just be clear about it. You can be a follower of Jesus and be hiding sin for long, protracted periods of time. You cannot have confessed it to God or to people that you need to. And it's not saying you're not a Christian, but what it's saying is to hide in that darkness and sin, you are not reflecting the light or being a light as you are so called. You are categorically light. But you don't light a light and then put it under a basket. That's what Jesus is saying. He is the illuminating and the purifying agent. And we need his light to be working in and through us that we may be light in turn, that we may walk in him. Jesus talks about this in other places in the Sermon on the Mount when he talks about the light within us or the eye of our heart being dimmed. The language is similar here. He is the illuminating, purifying agent that we may walk in him. Verse 16, he closes with these thoughts here. He says, in the same way that a city set on a hill can't be hidden, or that a lamp that's lit isn't put under a basket but is on display for all to see, in that very same way, let or allow your light to shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Your light is not about your glory. Your light is not about how great and how magnificent you and I are. Your light is always a reflection, as the light of the world, of the greater light. You know, there are some nights, are there not, when the moon is just like putting on a show, right? It looks like it's like 10 feet away from you. It's enormous. It's huge. And you're like, wow, the moon is amazing. Well, you know, if you know anything about the moon, that all that light that you enjoy is reflected from the sun. The moon radiates no light of its own. It is reflecting a greater light. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and not give you glory, but give glory to your Father who is in heaven. I think the language here is super interesting. He doesn't say, in the same way, shine your light before others. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say, all right, did anyone watch the Care Bears growing up? I'm all over with my metaphors today, but okay. Any other millennials that grew up? They had that little symbol on their stomach that would just, you know what I mean? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, I didn't even know that, but you guys got it. See? This is why the church is a family. You fill in the metaphors when I don't know what I'm talking about. Jesus is saying, let your light, the light that is within you, shine. You don't generate this light. It is a reflection of who I am and what I've done for you and where I have placed you because of my grace and love. Letting and allowing is very different than conjuring up or strengthening up. Like the wrong response to a sermon in this text would be, all right, I got to muster up the strength and the willpower and the effort to shine brighter. No, it's not about that. And we ask ourselves, but how? Jesus will give us some help. But something that you and I need to know, and this was so borne out in our prayer time before the gathering this morning. If you don't know, there's a group of us that pray before the gathering. And something that was said that was really true, and there was just this sense of agreement as we were praying. Just how easy it is where we live to just drift into complacency and comfort. Now, I know I talk about this a lot, so some of you are already tuning out. Please don't. In Marin County, where we live, it is so easy for two reasons to drift into complacency and comfort. Number one is many people who live here, not everybody, but many people who lived here have embraced this life and this culture for a particular reason. They like the freedom that comes from living in a place like this. They like the advancements that have been made in a place like this. And it can be attractive, indeed intoxicating, to be here and to rest on the laurels of our accomplishment. Conversely, for those of us who follow Jesus, it is very easy to ride in that spot of, I know Jesus, I love Jesus, I want to follow Jesus, but I know that a lot of people around me don't know Jesus or love Jesus or want to follow Jesus, and so I'm going to stay in my lane. Now let me tell you, as someone who has lived here for my whole life almost, that is incredibly easy, and that groove is very, very deep in the church. It is a well-trodden path. And you're lying to yourself if you're saying that you have not found rest in that crevice for seasons or years of your life. And what a text like this does is it confronts our complacency. What it does is it makes us ask a very difficult question of ourselves, which is, if you and I are indeed the light of the world, without any ounce of guilt or shame, you and I need to ask the question, what does that mean then as we live here? Because this calling comes to us in 2024 in the Bay Area as it came to those who sat on the hillside that Jesus was speaking to. It's not nerfed, it's not cushioned, it's not, we don't get a mulligan or a buffer here. The calling comes to us. The question then is asked, though, what does it look like in your life and in mine? What I'm going to give you is what I believe is the best gospel response to this call, and we'll just end with this. It's easy to drift. It's easy to get caught in the current. Part of living here is when you go to the beach, there's all these signs that are like, swim here. Maybe you shouldn't swim here, though. John's laughing. It's like, swim here, but don't sue us if... And why? Because there's these powerful currents at play out in the waters, right? And it may look like a safe beach to go and play in, but you may not know it, and there's a riptide that takes you out to sea. Living here can be a lot like that. It can be very easy to get caught up in what everyone else is doing. It can be very easy to get caught up in comparing yourself to your neighbors. It can be very easy to get caught up in striving for a life that is just a little bit more than you have currently and finding comfort. Once I reach that stage, I'll be good. So for you and I, the gospel speaks to that desire. The gospel what Jesus did speaks to that wrestling that you have, that comparison that we battle, that struggle that we battle with. Am I enough? Is my life enough? Is this really all there is? Why am I so despondent and so at a loss living in one of the most beautiful places on the earth? Jesus says this in John 3:21. Whoever does what is true comes to the light so that it may be clearly seen that his works have been carried out in God. Whoever does what is true comes to the light so it may be clearly seen that his works have been carried out in God. Some of us need to hear the gospel again. And here's what I mean. We do not want to add on to the gospel what Jesus did for us. We do not want to twist it and make it mean something that it's not. I just think sometimes we're content playing in the shallow pool of the gospel when there are depths that we have yet to explore. It's not that the gospel is not sufficient for what you are feeling, wrestling through, walking in. It's that you don't understand how free you are. Forgiveness of sin, the sin that you and I have committed in our life, the sin that we feel defines who we are as people. When the gospel declares forgiveness of that sin, it is declaring far more than just you are made right before God, although that is the most important thing. What that is inviting you into, through that proclamation, is a relationship with the Father of yours in heaven, and it is not about just turning you into a good person. It is not just about transforming you into someone who used to do this and now I do this. No, it's about living from a different place than you did before. It's about seeing the world differently once you have been encountered and see the Son of Man. It's about living from a place of abundant freedom, not being scared if you're going to mess up again. It's about living with a clean conscience before God and before others. As the light works within you, it exposes, we repent, we are forgiven, and we're able to walk forward, not hiding or shirking, but with a clean conscience before ourselves, before God and before others. It's about living from a confident faith, that as you have experienced these things, they don't just feel amazing, but you are able to testify in a true way that the gospel is true because it's worked in your life. It's from living from these places of freedom, cleanliness of conscience, confident faith, none of which you did, but it is a result of the light working within you. And only when that work is happening are we able to be a light to other people. I think so many followers of Jesus feel apologetic for their faith, inconfident, not confident about what God has done, or that it has really any power to make a difference in the lives of the people around us. Am I the only one? So we spend all this time apologizing, pre-qualifying, instead of letting the Word be the Word, instead of letting Jesus be Jesus, instead of letting God be God, and to let Him do the work that only He can do, that He's done in your life. Let your light shine before others, Jesus says. Not a light that you've conjured, but the light that He has given you and that works within you. As that changes the way you treat other people, as that changes the way you view yourself, as that changes the way you view the world, let that light shine before others, that they may see your life. That they may see your life. You have far more influence than you think you do. So much effort is spent today grasping for influence for the sake of the kingdom. When really we're just, a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times we're just really elevating ourselves. You in your everyday normal life, at your everyday normal job, with your everyday normal family have profound influence. Profound ability to affect the lives of those around you. Profound ability to listen to me, make real, tangible change in the kingdom. But we shirk that so often. We either disqualify ourselves or we think that we need to be in a certain position or do a certain thing to make a difference, and that's just not true. Jesus says that as you live your life, wherever you are scattered, wherever you are placed, to let your light shine before others. As God works in you, let other people see that. As you fail and God forgives, let other people see that. As you live your life differently than those around you, let other people see that. So that when they see you and your good works, they may give glory not to you, but to the one who gives you the light in the first place. This is a combination, again, this was alluded to earlier, but this is a combination of us living our lives well to the glory of God, but also, like Peter says, to have an answer for why your life looks different. Now, so many of us hear that and we go, I'm not an apologetic person, I don't know all the facts or the debates, And people ask you, why do you live differently? Why do you spend differently? Why do you do this with your children? Why do you do this with your time off? Why do you volunteer here? You don't have to be weird about it. You can just say. You can just say and explain the reason. So, John, you can come on up and we're going to respond now. So I have 3 things I want to say in response, and then we'll close. Some of you need to hear this morning, some of us need to hear, that categorically, because of Jesus, you are the light of the world. And it's so easy to disqualify yourself from that category. It's so easy to think someone else would be a better light than me. Or maybe when I get myself together, then I'll be a light. No, categorically, you are a light. That's what Jesus is saying here. To embrace that. To embrace the God that you at one point had just heard about, but now you see as a follower of Jesus. Now you feel the warmth of the light of the world. Now you experience the love and the grace of God through Jesus Christ. Some of you need to hear this morning that is yours to embrace fully in Christ. And to not shy away from it or to not disqualify yourself from what is true about you. Some of us are more in a second category where we know that's true about us, but we are so caught up in sin, we are so entangled with selfishness, we're so wrapped up in our pride that maybe we can't even see that these things are things that need to be addressed. And I pray this morning as this word goes forth that the Spirit would convict me of those places in your life, and that you would know that because of Jesus you are called lovingly out of the dark. God's not a SWAT team who's trying to clear your heart by shouting at you. But you're the one who's hiding in your sin. You're the one who's hiding in your shame. God's more like a father who's inviting you out of the dark and say, come on out. Come on out. Come on out. It's not where you're supposed to be. I'm here for you. Lastly, some of us need to hear that you are set apart for works and glory. This light that we've been given is not just ours for ourselves. It is primarily for yourself. It is primarily for your home, but it is not just to stop there. The connotation, what Jesus is saying here, is that the light exuding forth from you that is given to you by God Himself is to shine before others, that God may get the glory and not us. So brothers and sisters, as we respond now, take up one of those 3 responses. Do you need to embrace the light of the world? Do you need to remind yourself that you have seen the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords? Do you need to come out from a dark place and receive the grace of God and the forgiveness of sin? Do you need to remember that you're set apart not just for yourself and your own purposes, but that you may join in the glory of God as He reveals Himself to the world?